All right, as you know, I've never been the guy who drills down on gear. I like gear. I like the way it looks. I care about how it functions, but I've never drilled down on it. But now I find myself looking forward to these episodes every week, every other week with Taylor Bodin, lead trail reviewer of Believe in the Run, because I've been building my vocabulary. I think I'm like a 5%, or like bottom 5% in terms of how much I know about shoes, even though I've worn them my whole life. I've been running in trail shoes for 13 years or so. And so we've gone brand by brand, and we've started with heritage. We kind of paid sort of an homage to all the greats that have gone before us, that have set up our industry to be what it is in terms of Solomon and what's happened North Face recently. And we've looked at Brooks, did a little bit with Terex. But today we feel like we've kind of made that, we've spent our time in heritage. We've done our time. We've paid our respects. And now we're into these modern shoe companies, these new shoe companies, 2020, 21, 22, that have all just come out recently. And they've made a huge splash. And one time, a quote that sticks with me from Taylor is that, well, maybe Hoka isn't going to have one dominant competitor, but it's going to be death by 1,000 one percenters. And today, I think we've got a handful of one percenters, maybe more. Depends on if you're in Europe, depends on if you're in America. But before we get into NorMal, Norda, and Speedland, Taylor, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. As you were talking, I'm just thinking about, I was just creating an article. We do our end of year, our best in gear awards. And it was interesting. I just kept thinking about our conversations because of the shoes that popped up of what our reviewers love the most in each category. And yeah, it has some of those heritage brands. Like, it was actually a surprise to me that Brooks showed up on there the most of like,
Man,
I know.
that means I was
Yeah.
wrong.
Well, I mean, in some ways, but yeah, in some ways we are, but we were totally right on that brand. It's here, it'll it'll come in with a big swing.
Yeah.
Like, I had a big lineup this last
Yeah.
year, and they were all like good enough to be on our year-end awards. But then there's also a lot of brands that are showing up that, yeah, there are these 1%, really niche, you could say, but they're making they're making a big splash, even though they're smaller companies. And yeah, I don't think we could be at this point in trail running without any of those big players that we've talked about before. But I'm excited about this talk today because it's getting into all the, if you're a gear nerd, it's going to get into all that. If you're looking for running experience, it's encompasses all that. And there's just small nuances between each brand that makes it so
Yeah.
unique that there
Yeah.
is space for all of these 1% brands.
What's fun about doing brands like this for me, and we'll see when we get into NorMal, maybe they're an exception, but they're new, they're young, they're nimble. So every release is really exciting because they're still developing their vocabulary, their design language, their feature, their product language, all this sort of stuff. So each one has to me, a lot of anticipation, or at least excitement
Mm-hmm.
when it gets released. But why don't we just jump in? We kind of had a little exercise right before that was kind of fun. It's hey, we're gonna, of these three brands, which ones we think have the most sales, just for fun. And your comment was, well, it depends on if we're in Europe or in America. We're just gonna guess here, and we're gonna go in this order. That we're gonna go NorMal first because I'm in Europe. I do see NorMal around here. I've seen NorMal running along the river here. I've even seen them actually, and more so in a lifestyle application. People just walking around with their normal trail shoes on. Then we'll do Norda, and then we'll do Speedland. We're just guessing in terms of total sales volume. And we've never done multiple brands in one show. So also that's a unique challenge for me to drive this, to push this along at a reasonable pace to where they all get their fair share. They all deserve it. But let's jump in with NorMal. Kilian Jornet, and it's a Kilian Jornet and Camper partnership that started in 2022. My primary question, and it also then is my primary concern compared to Norda and Speedland, which are true startups. Kilian joined forces with Camper, and
Mm-hmm.
Camper is a if you ever go to a major city in Paris, you'll see Camper shoe stores everywhere. They're huge. What do you know about Camper and Kilian working together?
The basics of what I know, and this is coming from an American perspective and talking to Americans connected with NorMal, is that camper is a resource. They're a financial resource. They can get any materials that you want. So they're really an incredible resource, they have incredible experience, a long time of experience in the footwear industry and gear industry.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be what camper is mostly for NNormal, a
Okay.
resource in a lot of different ways, not just a financial resource, but a solid resource.
Okay. That makes sense. And I see also that they're from Majorca, Spain. And so maybe
Yeah.
there's that connection too. I never knew that. I always thought with a name like Camper, to me, that was maybe British or something that's
Yeah. Uh-huh.
not Spanish, but it looks
Yep.
like maybe there's some connection there on the Spanish level.
Yeah, there could be. I'm not sure of that for sure, but yeah, I think it's kind of from a financial perspective for Killian and his family of like, that's the way to go instead of
You're
taking
right.
out all this capital, getting investors otherwise of
Yeah.
that would be
It's
a
smart.
huge jump, which
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like when you look at the other two brands, these are when they started, the founders they're late in their career. I shouldn't say late in their career, but they have a lot of experience in this industry before jumping
Yeah.
into their own venture. And so does Killian. He's still fairly young though.
Yeah.
He had a ton of experience working with product at Solomon. And I
Mm,
mean, we talked about that on our Solomon
yeah.
episode. You guys should go back and
Yeah.
listen to that if you haven't. Of like, he was along for those early years of development into what it is today. Some of the shoes that are still coming out still
Mhm.
absolutely have his influence. And so there's a lot of experience coming into this little sphere of what normal is now and pays dividends apparently.
It's a great perspective. I don't know how I didn't think of it that way because that's generally how I think. But yeah, he kind of had a cheat code by going with Camper. Killian doesn't have to manage
Yeah.
supply chain. He doesn't have to manage sales teams. I know they have them. I don't know, I don't know the structure, and maybe it's outside the scope of the show, but you're right. There's like a hack that he got with Camper. And if he feels some level of alignment with them on environmental impact or something like that, it's not obvious that
Yeah,
Camper's
exactly.
value proposition is an environmental impact proposition, but maybe there is something there. There's some alignment. And so he got a hack into
Mhm.
getting a shoe company, at a young age without the capital. So
Yeah.
what makes a normal shoe a normal shoe? Like what's their thing?
Yeah, I think if we first like talk about ethos for Killian himself when he's wanting to design a shoe, like the main front is sustainability. So creating a good shoe that performs that you're going to want to be in because I mean if you're not
Yeah.
selling it and nobody wants to be in it, it doesn't
Right.
really
Doesn't
matter.
matter the impact on the environment.
Exactly. And so if also Killian's using all of these products. And so if
Mm,
he's not using them, if they're not up to that standard to be at a world class performance level, like again, so
good
that's
point.
that's another point. So
Yeah.
it's sustainable from the standpoint of you want to be able to wear it and you got to be able to wear it for a long time. And so he's going for a certain experience, just like we talked about with Solomon. It's going to be that
Hmm.
more grounded, feel the earth, be connected type experience. And that's where they came out with their first normal Shrock. So it's a lower to the ground, really versatile shoe, super light. That's what a lot of people like about it. Super light, super durable. And it feels mostly modern when you think of the scope of what the market is right now for trail running. Like I mentioned, our Best in Gear awards, 16 of the 19 shoes that were on there had a some sort of super critical modern midsole. So the foam underneath the foot, which is going to be it's going to be a lighter experience. It's going to be bouncier, that kind of experience, where that's not exactly what was going on here. This is a softer midsole, but it's not exactly that. It's going to be, yeah, a lower to the ground connected feel that's going to be good for anything from technical to shorter races. Some people are doing their 100 miles in these. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just going to be based off of what you prefer, but it's just a really solid shoe, durable, super durable, has that matrix upper, really, really technical. Vibram, Mega Grip, Outsole. So from a material standpoint, they're really building this thing to be strong, light, fast, connected to the ground.
But is there anything innovative happening here, or did Killian in a lot of ways take everything he did at Solomon and all that time and kind of all of that knowledge and brought it into his ideal perfect shoe?
I think that's basically the idea behind the Schrock of like coming in and creating a shoe that would be fairly ideal in a lot of circumstances. I mean, Killian's broken a lot of records in this shoe. There's nothing from like a materials. I mean, the materials are special. Don't get me wrong. They're the highest quality.
Yeah.
But from like, there's no like plates inside of this. There's no high stack that's making you bounce. It's just a secure fitting shoe, really reliable. Like, I just love putting this on and going for a trail run, no matter really where it goes or what I'm doing. So,
and that is that the one from 2022?
Yes. So this was their first shoe, their first launch, and I think it retails at $195.
Okay.
And so that is steep, but something that Normal is doing is that they have the ability. They design the outsole and the midsole, how that connects in a way that you can just resole this shoe.
Whoa.
And and so if you can just get a new sole, which is mostly why people get new shoes in the trail world, their sole is gone.
Yeah.
A lot of like older shoes, 5, 7 to 10 years back, the midsole actually doesn't change all that much. And that's what's really nice with this shoe of like the midsole, no matter how many miles you have on it, isn't going to change all that much. But your outsole, even though this is Vibram Mega Grip, some of the best in the industry, you can just replace that.
Whoa.
And so that
I've never heard of this before. I mean, if I had that shoe and I want to replace it, is it something that I can do? Do I send it to them? How do you actually get that done?
So they're working out the details of how that is. Some places have like a pop-up shop, like in Boulder. I don't know if they have it yet, but they'll have a cobbler there that they work with, who would specifically work on Normal shoes.
Well, that's
so
really
you can bring them in, get your new Mega Grip on there and go. And so from that standpoint, like that's sustainable, right?
That is.
Like keeping shoes on your feet longer, keeping them out of the landfill longer.
Yeah.
I like that idea for sure. And they're coming out with a new shoe. I'm sure you heard of it. That's more of a modular type. And so it's the Normal, I think they say Shaboy. It looks like K-Box. Some people like your boy Scott Jurek will be talking about. I think it's Shaboy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen it, and it actually is a very good looking shoe, and it has some design elements that remind me of Norda, actually.
Totally. Yeah. So that's their upcoming shoe for this next year that you can get some pre-sale right now. And the whole idea behind that is taking this idea further, where one, you can change the foam that you're going to be feeling underfoot. So if you want this experience that's more connected to the ground, more of a daily feel, you could put in an EVA midsole. If you want something that's lighter, faster, bouncier, you can take out that midsole. It's really an insole, but it's your midsole, the same foam you're going to feel. You can take that out and put in one of a different material, like a PIBA material that's going to be highly responsive, highly cushioned, doing that for race day or long efforts or something like that. But you can also, on that, you can see, I think what you're seeing with Speedland is that stitched outsole that comes up around the forefoot, around the foot a little bit. So their idea with that is just take all that off, replace it when you need it. Take out the midsole, replace it. So you have 3 shoes in one, essentially. So then you can just send that back when you need a new one and order just that foam you drop in. And the upper, I believe, is matrix. I can't remember what it is. And it's like one of the lightest, most durable uppers. If a shoe breaks down with matrix, it's not the matrix that's blown out. And so you have all these pieces that you can replace as needed. And that's their take on having a shoe that can give you a lot of experiences. And it's more sustainable. It's a really cool idea.
Okay. I came into this conversation wanting to be critical of NNormal on their camper partnership, but you changed my perspective on that. I wanted to be critical on their design, but I've actually seeing this Shaboy got me excited. I also want to be critical on their what sometimes could feel like virtue signaling, but there's actually some real innovation happening on the impact side of things if it's not the material
Totally.
side of things. So all the things I was ready to be critical on. Now, the virtue signaling side of things, it's just maybe as someone who's far away from it, not like as close to it as you are, I heard a lot of these environmental things, but they were not obvious to me. I was missing the marketing or something, or maybe he was touting it before this sort of thing was out. But I think this is, I mean, that's other than materials, like that's revolutionary in some degrees to be able to just replace
Totally.
certain parts of your shoe. That's really impressive.
Totally. And I know that's like with Speedland's onset, and maybe we'll go to Speedland next, or
Yeah.
whoever, I can't remember who's next. But
It's
on their
Taylor's
onset,
choice.
sure. That was a big part of their idea of the desire to be able to go there and be able to like recycle in a sustainable way. But when it comes to practice, it is so hard in a global industry. And so even like NNormal's not going to come out with a bunch of new shoes every year. They might come out with a colorway or two of the same shoe because this is a type of shoe that a lot of people are going to want to be in. And so that's their sustainable standpoint of having more of a timeless feel, good for about anything, but also they have another one, and we'll see this with all of these brands we're talking about today. They basically have like a 2-shoe quiver, and then they're branching out on some of those shoes. So the other one they have is the Tomir, and this is the 2.0. And this one does have a more supercritical modern midsole. So it is going to feel bouncy, lighter. And this is their higher stack option. And that's what you're going to see with all these brands. They have a lower stack option, good for just about anything. Higher stack option that has a lot of the same ingredients, gives you a little bit of a different experience in terms of what the ride's going to feel like, different comfort measures. For the most part, like this one is on our Best in Gear awards, the Tomir 2.0, because it's a higher stack shoe, but also very durable, can go on a lot of different terrain. Like I take these into the mountains regularly. So yeah, so just kind of hitting a lot of standpoints, keeping them on people's feet.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
That's the one. I was just looking up the different colorways. That's the one that I saw that I've seen like in streetwear or lifestyle application here.
Yeah.
That
really comfortable.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's what they said. I said, "Oh, you're a trail runner?" And he said, "No, I've never, I will never, but I love these shoes."
Yeah. And just for NNormal's sake, I might want to say this of like, we know a lot of Killian's influence prompted a much slimmer last at Salomon. One thing with NNormal, it is going to be slimmer in the right spots, in the midfoot and the heel. Get really good lockdown. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
But then in the forefoot, it's going to be more generous than most of the Salomon. I know that's what hold some people back from trying NNormal, is they just feel like it's going to be a really slim, all the way through, a slim fit. But they are a little more generous, and they run a little bit long, especially on the Ciroc. So
yeah, I think it's because they're so low. They're so low profile. Like, you know, my description of Salomon back when we did that one was like there's like an F1 feeling to it. It's just like very low profile. The materials, there's nothing chunky about it, and so then the perception might be that it's smaller or narrower.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So.
All right. So in 21, our friends Dave Dombrow and Kevin Fallon, they were tooling around. They were the former heads of everything, shoe design, everywhere except for where Jean-Marc Dejean was apparently.
Exactly.
But, you know, these guys were, you know, they were made for this, and they are a lot of fun. They were, I think they had something that they called like Fuck Around Fridays or something that they were doing during the pandemic, where they would just make up some shoes just for fun on a Friday. They still do it? Nice.
Kevin and Dave, they post on their personal accounts a lot. And yeah,
well,
I'm here for it.
Speedland was born, and, you know, I was fortunate enough to have Dave Dombrow came to Salt Lake, and we did a podcast together. And thoroughly enjoyed him. I mean, I'm into him for the design. I love the design so much, and you know where he kept pushing me in that conversation was no, we're here for function. And it's not a coincidence that it looks good, but it's not our primary thing. It's like their value proposition is zero compromise on materials. We don't care what we have to charge, but we're going to put the best materials. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, what's your read on it? What's your take on them?
Well, I thought it was pretty cool for us at Believe in the Run. We were with them when they launched, and
Really?
like we were part of the story the whole time. And it's just been so fun to like one learn from those guys because their experience levels when you put them both together, and they've done a lot of jobs together over the years, but they've also
Yeah,
been at
crazy.
separate brands at times, and now they're back together. It's kind of reminds me of like, and they're car people. And so this would
Really?
resonate with them of like, you know, later on in your career when you have a little more money and some older folk, they're really not that old, of like, they get really into cars and can finally start doing the things to the cars that they want. Like my father-in-law is going to retire this year and he has a Corvette that he's
Mm.
going to rebuild and hasn't been able to do it, you know, for a long time since he's had kids and all that kind of stuff. And so it feels like they got to that point in their career where like, yeah, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
We can do it together as buddies, and their experience. And we talked about this with Killian too, of like, they have the experience right there. They have everything they need. They know the ins and outs of the industry.
Right.
They know the ins and outs of design and how things work. And they're both trail runners. And so that, you know, makes this project just near and dear to their hearts. And
Yeah.
that's, I always love, no matter what it is, like when people exude passion, like it's just fun to have some sort of window into that. And so like having our passions align, I guess, with trail
Hmm.
running and then
Yeah.
being able to get into something like this was their first shoe. Like it is just so cool to get something like this on foot and see how it develops over the
Mm.
years. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And so Speedland has really had two different styles so far. And so they're kind of making funnels for their shoes. So they have the SL models. Wait, hold on a second. So they have the GS models. I'm just going to get this clear. The GS models,
Yeah. This is going
which
to
I'll
be
hold
great for
up.
me because I don't understand it.
Yeah. And so, okay, I had it right. So they had the SL models, which is their first couple of models. That's what they came out with. Really revolutionary, like actually revolutionary for the trail running world. I think with coming off of like what we were talking about with Hoka, that made the bridge between those heritage to these newer ideas. They brought all the new ideas, right? And at a time where there was just a few coming into the market. And so this is their SL model, the SL PDX, their first shoe. Some things you'll notice on this, and these aren't available anymore, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them.
Yeah.
But they were the if you're not familiar with BOA, it's this dial system. But then they have this wrap that comes from the inside of the foot
Hmm.
and just secures from the inside over the top and pulls you down into the footbed. So it's really this shoe, this SL series, was the best, is the best fitting shoe I've ever been in. It's the most
Really?
secure. It feels
Wow.
like an extension of your foot. And so having two dials where most
Wow.
shoes just do one, you can secure the forefoot, the front part of the forefoot more than you can in most any other shoe.
Did
And
they do
up
better on
toward,
that one than future versions? Or are you just saying when you put that on, that was the best ever and they've continued to get better?
so when I put this on, this was the best ever and still is in terms of fit. You
Hmm.
can't dial in really any other shoe the same.
Hmm.
Even one of their newer models, which is the GS series, their higher
Hmm.
stack series, you
Okay.
can't get the same experience because you're not as low to the ground. So this one's going to be a lower to the ground model. You're going to feel more connected. Like that was one part that's revolutionary, but then they have this like stitched on outsole partly for durability, and their idea initially was like, hey, when that runs out, yes, we could essentially replace that if we needed to.
Hmm.
So that was revolutionary at the time. And then another thing that Speedland is famous for is they were the ones who really started that drop in midsole And so the foam you would feel underfoot is now inside the shoe, and you can drop it in.
Whoa.
And you can add a plate if you wanted to. So this is a Carbitex plate. And so it does help a lot with stability. There's not a lot of torsional motion, and you can't bend it in certain ways, but it bends a lot in other ways. And so it's really becoming custom footwear, which is like we're seeing it with NNormal custom footwear. Speedland, they were the first, and I'm excited to see where they go. They're having a couple more models come out this next year, a new line.
Okay.
And so yeah, they went from this and then applied it to the SL series, and then they applied it to a higher stack. So that's for these new companies, they're really hitting the more connected feel, the more grounded, classic trail runner feel with their own take on it. And then they go for a higher stack version because, especially in America, we want the cushion, we want the ride. And so they have a lot of the design elements we've talked about with other shoe brands of, yes, higher stack. This is a beaded TPU external midsole, but they also have the internal drop-in midsole. So lots of cushion, different experiences, so different layers of that. Good, I mean, a really quality Michelin outsole, still with the 2 BOA dials, but because this one is higher stack, it's not going to feel as nimble, of course, as some of these other shoes that are lower to the ground. So that's really like their 2 offerings, and I think it would be honoring to Speedland to say that they work on a commission basis. So they create a lineup of shoes, and they might do a few different colorways or iterations of a shoe. Like this is the GS series. So this is the GS PDX, the Grand Sport. And so this is just paying homage to Portland. But they also have a couple other collaborations with Cam Hanes of this very shoe. Their first one was a free trail version, but each one has the basics are all the same on it. Maybe slight variations in terms of what type of plate sometimes, or sometimes like a little bit of an upper adjustment, just tiny changes in that series until they go to a new model, which they'll have this GL model, which is kind of combining the 2 models they have already, meeting them in the middle. Yeah.
So the Michelin sole, I mean, I like it. Again, I'm coming at it from it's just like an aesthetic and a unifying theme of like something about Michelin feels premium because, I think of Michelin star restaurants, even though they're a tire company. Michelin versus, aren't there occasional shoes that have like a Goodyear sole or a Pirelli
Continental rubber?
Continental, yeah.
So there's
compared
Goodyear
to the Vibram, like what is it? Why Michelin for them?
Yeah, and so originally Michelin was able to do this wraparound outsole, and they partnered with that. It is a really tacky rubber. Once it gets colder, it actually freezes up a little bit, and so that's one of the knocks on it.
Okay.
And they've adjusted it over time. Like this is equally as tacky, and
doesn't turn into ice.
Conditions dependent. And so it is good rubber, but nowadays with a lot of shoes, like we're talking about now splitting hairs of where if Vibram Mega Grip is like the A+ or the A standard, this would be like, in the B+ range, So there's a lot of shoe companies and just rubber companies that are in the game. Every shoe brand wants their own rubber, but some companies will go out, and a lot of them will go out to like Vibram and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really is like, it's a scale that's fairly close, and for the most part, consumers won't pick up on all the nuances, but because I think if you're a shoe nerd and getting a lot of variety of shoes, you'll start feeling the difference where this is like super tacky is the word I like to see say, but it doesn't get a lot of like clawing action. And other brands get that better, and
So
durability and all that kind of stuff.
you'd say Vibram is the best of the best. That's the top
I would
performing.
say it's the most well-rounded, top performing in terms of grip and application. There are a couple others like VJ Shoes has their own outsole it's a butyl rubber, and it's like incredibly durable and super grippy. I don't know if I have. Yeah, I do.
Of course you do.
I do. Yeah. And so, yeah, again, and like this would be like if Vibram's the A, this is, up there. In some cases might be better, in some cases might not be, but it's up there. There's a lot of, yeah, there's just so many brands with so many great things going on.
I mean, Speedland is obviously pretty close to selling out every time. I mean, I don't know their order sizes, but they're selling out. I mean, I'm sure buying the right sizes is the challenge. Like, I don't envy any of that, I should say. To be in that position of trying to forecast sizes, all that sort of stuff. Probably by now they're in pretty good shape, and I know their background could get them there as well. But what do you think for Speedland as a brand when they're, putting together their next shoe, when they're thinking through the next thing, like their performance, they're going to make that performance even better, the material even better, they're going to keep upgrading all that. But why don't we see their shoes on more first place finishes? And I asked that because I asked Dave, and I was like, hey, these are clearly good looking shoes. You probably did design first and function,
Totally.
right? And he said, no, function. So if these are such great performing shoes, I think I have an answer for this, but I'm just curious your take. Like, why don't we see these on more podiums at elite, of the marquee races?
Yeah, exactly. For one, like when you take a shoe like this, there's a lot of really quality ingredients, and the experience of running in it is really unique. It's great. But at the end of the day, it's a heavy shoe. It's one of the heaviest shoes that I've reviewed in recent history. And so that's one thing. Elites these days, that's one, most of them are tied to brand.
Yes.
So that's one thing.
Yeah.
And another thing is that they're one of the first aspects they're going to look at is, does it feel light? Does it feel fast? And where this particular series, which they've been focusing on for the last couple of years, the GS series, it's heavier. It feels good. You can do a lot of different terrain with it, even though it's a really high stack shoe, quite versatile. But the fact is, it's heavy. It's not the most nimble. And if you're feeling that on race day, even in the 100-milers.
Yeah.
And so where pace is a little more irrelevant, you still want that certain sensations. And I don't think this one's going to give the elite sensation per se. I say that, and then you can have someone like Dylan Bowman go out there and crush 100 miles in it, right?
Right.
Dylan Bowman's their athlete. And so that's part of it too. And so,
yeah.
And that maybe that's a conversation with you and Wolf Runner of like, which brands, like the Yankees, of course they should be winning everything with the highest payroll of like which brands have the highest payroll. And Speedland just doesn't do that. It's these two guys with a ton of experience giving some of the best product in the industry, but their focus is getting the best product and, like you said, function out there to the masses, and not necessarily the elites. Not saying they're not focusing on the elites, because all of their shoes come out of elite level partnerships.
Yeah.
And so
I would say, as an observation, is that Dave and Kevin are happy. And so, it's like they had, as we've mentioned multiple times, these successful career in really high pressure environments. Like Dave was a head of design for Under Armour, and that wasn't just shoes, that was shoes across all sports. Massive amount. It seems like he's just having fun, and they seem happy. And then they're putting out this great shoe, and it's selling out. So on that level, like, it's fun. It's fun to drill down on it and ask the questions of why aren't they on more podiums? But at the end of the day, what an enviable spot to be selling out of all your product and to at least perceptively from my vantage point, they're happy. That's fantastic.
Totally. And I mean, just two of the athletes that they have on their team, like they're doing the brand thing right, of like they're building a brand on a couple of marquee athletes. And Cam Hanes, he's a great runner, known for his hunting more than anything,
Yeah.
but they were able to spread, well, hunting and fitness. And
Yes.
so they automatically, with someone who's also trail running, they automatically entered those spaces,
Yeah.
and the landscape changes for them in a sales standpoint. Because I mean, my brother's a big hunter. He was into fitness and runs every once in a while. He would totally grab that shoe just because
Nice.
Cam Hanes has it. And
Well,
so,
and I think like they've done a good job of. I mean, I think they were mentioned on Joe Rogan, so that was an instant like some credibility. And I think they were last I talked to him, they were trying to get Jelly Roll into him. You know, the country artist
yeah,
who's kind of like Post Malone meets like Nashville country.
okay,
So they're really smart on that level. Like, you know, they're very
totally,
good grassroots marketers that with not maybe not a massive marketing budget. They've made all the right decisions, and everybody, and maybe it's because of how unique they look, or it's the right people talking about it, but everybody
yeah,
knows about Speedland and they're very young. So kudos to
yeah.
them.
Well, and it was interesting being at Western States this past year, of how many people actually were wearing the GS series for Speedland. I was really impressed, actually.
Yeah,
And
I
maybe
am
that's
surprised with
more
it.
their because I was in their neck of the woods. But I mean, you go around. I'm near Boulder. If you're trail running around Boulder, you'll see a pair every now and then. I
Yeah,
see Speedland more than I see NNormal around here, which is interesting.
that is. Okay, last and certainly not least, I
Yeah,
think
totally.
Norda has the most loyal fans. I don't want to use cult because I think Satisfy has usurped the word cult and turned it into their own thing. But they've got people that, I mean, they have a cult following of people who love Nordas and celebrate them. And they've done a pretty special thing from a marketing standpoint, but built around an amazing shoe, an amazing looking shoe. I've never
Yeah,
put one on. And yeah,
you
the
need to.
community that built them, everyone you talk to seems to know the names of the owners, even like they've really done something special with, you know, Nick and Willa. I talked to Wolf Runner. He's like, oh, you should talk to Nick and Willa. Anyone I talk to, like, oh, Nick and Willa. It's
You
like,
really should.
what a great thing to have this brand with beautiful shoes. And then the owner, like, there's almost like a mom and pop vibe of like, hey, you should talk to the owners. They're great people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just we were emailing back and forth before going down to the running event, and the emails were like, see you at the running event. And then Will is like, somebody has to hold down the barn. I'll be here in Canada. Like, very much mom and pop. Yeah. But I think with all of these brands that we're talking about, their reputation as people, it is just amazing. Like each of these brands, Kevin and Dave, wonderful people. I've never met Killian, but everybody says he's the most amazing
Right.
person.
Right.
And I know some of the people he works with, great people. And like Nick and Willa, yeah, known them, met them many times. Of like, they're just great people. And like,
Where are they at in Canada? Where's the headquarters?
don't ask me that.
That's all right.
Somewhere up there.
America's top hat. That's
Something
all
that
I know.
has to do with this topography on their outsole, like that kind of design is in there. And so,
Really?
yeah, the Canadian shield is within a lot of their design. And so, yeah, I don't know exactly. Canada, I want to go there, but I just don't know too much about it.
We'll figure
Where
it
do I
out.
go? We'll find it.
They'll let us know. Someone in the audience will let
But
us know after this.
absolutely, yes. I feel like as Montreal, I don't even want to say anything because I feel like I'm going to be wrong.
How wrong we are.
Yeah, that's okay. I
Yeah.
can stomach that. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Nick
All of
and
a sudden, this
Willa,
is an episode of Bad Runners Take here. Yeah.
I'd be glad to be on it. But yeah, Nick and Willa, like Dave and Kevin, they have a ton of experience in the industry. Not all like performance footwear, but big variety that led them to saying, "Hey, we want something. We know what we want, and it's not out there, so we're going to create it."
Yeah.
And they were able to. And that their first shoe was the Norda 01. And so
People loved that
just
one.
man, there's a lot to love about it. And from a material standpoint, the three brands that we're talking about basically have all the same materials. Vibram Mega Grip outsole, a Dyneema, like really durable upper. This midsole is what's really unique about this shoe. It's a Vibram midsole too. And so, which is not on very, this might be the only running shoe that I know of besides the Norda O2 as well that has a Vibram midsole. They do have some for like some of their work shoes and whatnot. But yeah, it's just a shoe that can tick a lot of boxes, extremely durable. Like I end up, after retiring this from running, I still wear this one every day as a teacher just because that
Really?
midsole still feels so good. And
Wow.
so it's just one of those shoes that's going to be around for a long time. It's going to last for a long time, give you the experience that you want for a long time. And even after its life, like I could probably replace this outsole, which is a quite durable outsole, that Vibram Mega Grip. But yeah, it's just one of those shoes that feels unique, even though there's nothing entirely special about it.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. I think the specialness has
yeah, it
been
looks
their
so good.
marketing around it, their photography around it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they did it, but whoever it was, I don't know, this like 2020, 2021 just blew up, and so many people were treating, I was surprised that they didn't have like this formal ambassador program. By the time this airs, we'll have released a episode with Wolf Runner about, our Bad Runners take on ambassador programs, and he's talking about Norda a lot in that episode. And I'm like, okay, I assume you're an ambassador, a formal ambassador of Norda. It's like that. No, I just love them. It's like, okay, well, they've
He just
accomplished
loves Norda.
that without
Yeah,
an ambassador program, but people just everywhere. I mean, but it was also people who had a similar aesthetic, just like Satisfied, certain look of person goes toward that. It feels like it was something similar with Norda. Even if you didn't wear the shoe, you like wore the brand. You know what I mean? Like you
exactly.
represented it.
Yeah, totally. And you can kind of look at someone and see if they're like a satisfied person, and if they are, they're probably wearing Norda. And so that's kind of where Norda falls in. Yeah, they do. And I think Nick and Willa, I can't remember exactly if they both have like fashion industry background, but they have fashion sense, obviously,
Clearly, yeah.
of when they're designing a shoe. And so yeah, it's just, it looks so good but you wouldn't be able to say exactly why. It just does, right?
Right, right.
Right? It
Good
just has
colors.
the colors for sure. And this O1 shoe, it'll probably always be part of what they have to offer. I think it's $295, which is up there, but if it's going to last a long time and you can wear it as a lifestyle shoe after, they come out with new colorways every season, but it's still the same shoe. And I love that about
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
a
looking
shoe
shoe.
that will feel, looks and feels timeless. And
Okay,
that's a
so
unique thing these days.
I'm looking at all their colorways, and yeah, my goodness.
Yeah.
Axolotl is stunning, man. Okay, so the price tag, I wasn't expecting that. I've never formally been on the market, but to see the close up of what's happening on the sole
Mm-hmm.
is worth the price of
So cool.
admission. That's stunning. So is it material? Is that price so high? These are just, is it materials? Is that it?
It's partly the same idea as what's going on at Speedland. They chose premium, like cut no corners. This is what we want, and we know that will perform, and so that's part of it. And also, it's been, I think it's been $295 since they launched it, maybe
Since it dropped.
275 originally,
Okay.
and so it hasn't dropped, hasn't gone up. Well, maybe it did, I guess, $25, but still not a, yeah, it's just that they're extremely quality ingredients,
Yeah.
and they're put together in a thoughtful enough way to help it perform, because we're seeing a lot. There's, like, if I tick the box of Dyneema, Vibram, and a supercritical midsole, I could pull like probably half or more of the shoes off my wall that have
Yeah.
all those types of ingredients in it, but
Yeah.
it's the application, and they have the
Mm.
fit. It's going to be slightly more generous in the forefoot, but locked down in the heel and in the midfoot. That's one thing that people love about it. They also have the O2, which is their lower to the ground model.
Okay.
Which is basically the same ingredients, just in a lighter package, a little more cushioned around the heel, but you still get the basic idea of like, this is going to be, when I choose between a light and fast shoe, I'm a lot of times choosing between the Norda O2 or the normal Schrock that we were already talking about. They're in a very similar category. And so again, all these brands, Norda, Speedland, Normal, they all have basically two options that are going to serve just about anybody. And they're high quality, high performance, look good, feel good. Can I show? I feel like I've been saying Normal's coming out with a new shoe, Speedland's coming out with a new shoe, and they're all kind of hitting that stage in their careers where they're coming out with a third shoe. And I happen to have the third shoe.
I think did they release it on Instagram recently? I feel like there's like a tag by the shoelace that says Norda that looks really cool.
Yeah.
Dang it.
This is the Norda 05, so this is their race day model.
Okay.
And they've had a lot of success with their runners in this model. It's super light, still stays true to all the things that the 01 and the 02 have. It has that Vibram outsole. This is a Mega Grip Elite, which I've never seen that on a shoe before. It has that highly responsive midsole, so this one won't be as durable from that standpoint of being able to like take it out for years to come, basically, and have a fairly similar experience. Also does have that really tenacious but light Dyneema upper. And so again, a lot of the same ingredients, just slightly different application, and the tweaks to it is what makes it real special.
Is it lighter than the 01 and 02?
So much lighter. Like this is entering that featherweight, even though it's like the moderate stack.
Wow.
And so here, I'll try to hold up both of them. Fairly similar in terms of stack and everything, but noticeably much more lightweight, performance oriented.
Where did they cut the weight?
A lot of it will come in this midsole foam.
Okay.
Since this is like a Piba foam, Pebax is super light, super airy, highly responsive. The biggest knock on it right now is that it doesn't last as long, which is why you see it in these race day applications, because you bring it out for a special occasion, and that's totally this shoe.
Man, okay. I do want to ask about the 03. I almost bought that one. They call it like an approach shoe, I think. No shoelaces. Because I if I'm not going for a run, I don't want to have shoelaces. And it's the coolest shoe I've ever seen without shoelaces. I mean, I'm looking at it here. The colorways are sickening. Like they're so good, it hurts. So if you're into design, it's the most satisfying thing I've seen today, hands down. They have this.
If you need
G
a good
plus
Christmas
maple
present,
what's that?
Oh, that's my favorite one right now. If you're in the market for a good Christmas present to treat yourself. So on a daily basis, I usually wear the 01 just because it's so comfortable. I like it. It's nice enough. I'm a teacher. Like I don't have to be super dressed up, but it's nice. It looks nice enough where nobody questions it.
Yeah.
In the winter, which is now like it's 14 degrees outside.
Oh.
I put on the 03. And so it has a waterproof outer. It's more of like a neoprene type booty over top. And so super weather resistant, keeps you really warm. Like I end up having to take them off at school. I have a pair of Hoka slides that I throw on. But
you change
it's a good looking
couple
shoe.
Hours.
Pretty much. It's a great shoe, and it has all that same performance. It has that Vibram midsole, Vibram outsole, like great shoe just to put on for a hike, for a walk, for just being out in the elements. You could run in it. I've done like some short trail runs in it to see if it was like a viable trail runner, and you could. It's that secure, not quite as secure without some laces, but it just slips on. Yeah, highly recommend all the shoes we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I would say if I were to think about the high level on all three of these. And this is just a guess. I'm fairly certain, there's not like private equity pressure on any of them to like, for exponential growth. I don't know. I mean, Camper
Yeah.
could have something like that. I don't know if they're publicly traded and there would be pressure like that. But I say that because it feels like there's enough. Like it feels like there's an abundance in the industry right now to where, of course, if they're a 1%er, and when we say that, we mean 1% of the market, and if Hoka's not going to have one main competitor, but they're going to have all these 1%ers, we're saying Norda takes their 1%, Speedland takes their 1%, Normal takes their 3%, whatever, however that is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Hoka will lose market share. Well, right now it feels like, from a consumer standpoint, like it feels like abundance. Like there's enough room for all of these brands right now. They all seem to be carving
There
out
totally
their
is.
own niche, and they're all, at least today's, each one has stark raving fans. And I guess we didn't mention Salt Lake connection on Normal with Dakota Jones. Each one, there's a level of fun. You got Killian, you got Dakota. We're saying the owner's names of Speedland, so it's like going to the local coffee shop to some degree, but they're making shoes. I mean, like, what a massively difficult thing. It's a great time to be in. It's a great time to be in trail running.
Yeah, and I always appreciate Thomas Newberger, Believe in the Run's founder, of like, he talks about, one, the media space, but also this running space in general, and that we're in a day and age where there is space for everybody. And when Normal brings their A game, it's only going to impact Norda positively, probably.
Yes.
And so all the shoes that we talked about today are going to be those 1% shoes probably forever, because they're going to be the shoes that appeal to people who are already in that space.
Yep.
More so.
Yeah.
Unless they're doing it from a style standpoint. If you're looking for performance and function, you're likely already a trail runner. You're likely looking for that next piece of something you probably already have in mind, whether it's comfort or overall fit, grip, whatever. And that's how most people are going to be coming into these brands, probably.
Yeah.
So, but there's also more brands that we haven't talked about yet that fit that space. There's also, the 2% and 5% brands too.
Yeah.
There's space for everybody. And I like being a part of this industry because of it.
Yeah.
We're going to the running event and we're going to see a couple brands that I've just recently heard of, like they're launching this year with similar tendencies of like, we know we want to do this with a shoe, and so we're going to do that. And so, yeah, it's a pretty cool time and space for the running industry as a whole. Shoes and performance, everything's just getting better and better. And yeah, I think some of these shows that we've done in the past are just showing us that every brand has really great things coming. We're splitting hairs between a lot of this. Yeah. And so,
there's fun episodes ahead of us that we've concepted and thought through. Another one of these 3 show episodes where we're looking at like European brands, like straight up European brands. And, when you come back from TRE, I'm sure there's going to be some fun stuff. We could do an episode all about the new stuff that's dropped there and stuff that you've learned.
Yeah,
there's so much going on.
Yeah. And it's only increasing, like you said.
Yeah, man. All right, well, let's do this again really soon. Have fun at TRE. By the time this drops, TRE, you might be back home. But either way, I hope you have a good time. And we'll
thank you.
do this again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Josh.
Yep, see you.